Today I'm revealing the 7-phase system for how we've grown multiple YouTube channels into the hundreds of thousands of subs as revenue generating marketing engines, regardless if you're starting from zero or if your channel is currently just a graveyard for old ads and distant webinars. So give me 30 minutes of your time and I'll show you exactly what it is and how it works. So here at Humble&Brag, we often get emails like this. I wanted to introduce you to bigheart.io. Bobby B is the head of growth and Jenny J is leading the paid marketing team. They want to expand on YouTube and I told them about your areas of expertise. Happy connecting. And these kinds of emails, they put me right back where I was when I was working at startups that had no YouTube channel, wondering how to get views, get leads, and ultimately, of course, get revenue. Fast forward a few years, I tried a lot of different types of content, got in front of the camera myself once or twice, figured out how to measure and prove the impact of videos, hired teams to scale the channels, and even appeared on stage all over Europe to talk about it. And now we run Humble&Brag, the agency for startups who want to scale through YouTube. Now there are a trillion videos out there about how to grow your YouTube channel as a creator, but hardly any about how to do it for a business looking for the next phase of growth. So yeah, that's why I'm making this video. If you follow these 7 steps, you'll be generating leads from YouTube within weeks of releasing your first video. So sit down with a pen and paper, watch and rewatch the video, and learn the system as if you are about to go and present it to your investors, because you might just have to. Bottom line, we've never seen a company do all 7 steps properly and not generate leads. Before we get started though, don't forget to subscribe for more videos just like this, and all the resources I mentioned in the video are linked in the description below. So let's get started with phase 1, and phase 1 is positioning your channel. And right now you might be thinking, oh, damn it, I just want to start making videos and more brand, blah, blah, blah. But trust me, if you do this work up front, you'll do 3 really important things. Firstly, you'll save yourself a lot of bad ideas, a lot of misfiring videos, and you'll save your editor a lot of wasted time. Secondly, you'll build a channel that people actually want to follow, maybe even a channel they need to follow. And thirdly, you'll afford yourself clarity, autonomy, and purpose. You'll understand what you're doing and why, and so will your colleagues, which means they're more likely to leave you alone to get on with it or hear the calling and help you out. So what is positioning with a capital P? Well, let me introduce you to the cake and the muffin. Now imagine you're a baker and you decide to grow your business by making the greatest chocolate cake in the world. The minute you decided to make a cake, you made a bunch of critical business decisions that define the shape of your business without you even knowing it. You decided on your target market, your competitive alternatives, your pricing, your scope for innovation. Your cake is going to be eaten by a well-to-do couple sitting down to a tea and cake in your bakery at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But you know what you could have done with those exact same ingredients? You could have made a muffin. And this little fella, he's eating on the move, and some quite frankly insane people even eat him for breakfast. And he's not competing against ice cream and other desserts like the cake, he's up against the donut and the bagel and the Chelsea bun. And if I stab it with this pen, then I'd make a lollipop, and again, the context would change. So all of this was to illustrate that you have to understand the context in which you're launching your channel. And that means marrying what you know about your customer with what gets watched on YouTube. And you know, the single biggest mistake that companies make when they start YouTube, they only address one of these 2 things. They publish the same content that they produce for their customers, but without packaging it for YouTube, like webinars, for example, or they imitate what the successful creators in their niche are doing, but just see a fraction of their success. So here are the 2 things you need to do in phase 1. Firstly, you need to bring in everything you know about your company's positioning and your ideal customer. And secondly, you need to bring in everything you know about your industry's presence on YouTube, from creators, from competitors, and from adjacent niches. With these in front of you, you have everything you need to develop a SOAR, a single obvious reason to exist, which for businesses can typically be spelled out like this. We help a specific audience understand a specific problem better. So let's start with number 1. Bring in everything you know about your company's positioning and your ideal customer. This means brand packs, competitor research, customer research, surveys, aggregated data, maybe even personas and jobs to be done, messaging that's performing particularly well in other channels, the best performing blog articles in terms of traffic and conversion, basically everything you need to answer the following questions. What is your customer's problem? How do you solve this problem for them? And why do they choose you rather than other people to solve that problem? And off the back of this, you can ask secondary questions and document your answers. So how would you describe your customer's promised land? What proof can you provide that you're the best solution, the best way to get to that promised land? What are your superpowers? Is there anything you really stand against? Are there any trends that are helping you grow or could help you grow? And which other marketing channels are working for you now and why? And what kind of messaging within those channels lands with customers. So document all the answers to those questions, and once you have all of this, you'll find you're already shaping a channel and its content in your head. So let me show you an example, starting with us right here at Humble&Brag. So our customers are startups and scale-ups. So what's their problem? Well, they want to grow a YouTube channel, but they just don't have the resources to do it. Resources meaning they don't have the expertise and they don't have the equipment. And that's a really big barrier to entry. So how do we solve this? Well, we're a fractional team that comes in and does everything end to end. And why do they choose us rather than other people? Well, because we have a track record with startups, because we understand the broader business context, and because we're full stack. Okay, so we know our channel needs to be for people working in these companies. And that means our content isn't about how to grow a YouTube channel per se, it's about how to grow a channel that supports company growth. And that already differentiates us from the huge majority of creators out there. Our audience is much smaller, but there's a lot more financial clout behind every view. And that means this video will get fewer views than this one that it was inspired by. And that's okay, because there's a logical thread between this piece of content and the service that we actually offer. So the big tip is weave that thread between your content and your offering and don't lose it. Because if you get to the heart of an audience problem, you will build a valuable following. And then we have the secondary questions, the promised land, the proof, the superpowers, the villain, and all of that comes in really useful when you're writing your scripts and developing your concepts, because that forms the basis of all those phrases, for example, that you wheel out in every video. The hook, for example, will almost always include the promised land and the proof. What will the viewer get from the video and why should they trust you to give it to them? And if you go back to the beginning of this video, you'll see that I did exactly that. You had the promise of growing a revenue generating channel and the proof that we've done this many times before and now it's our day job. Okay, let's move on to the second step of this phase, bringing in everything you know about your industry's presence on YouTube. So here you just need to start by spending a few hours on YouTube, entering your customers' most common questions into the search bar and just seeing what pops up. Pay attention to how the videos are packaged and delivered, the format, the production values, the presenter's style and persona. And at this phase, I normally simply open a mirror board, screenshot the thumbnails, and embed the link to the respective video. I click through to channels, order the videos by most viewed, and note any of the more recent videos which have performed really well. And by the end, I have a whole visual canvas of ideas that have worked in the past. Now this might sound laborious, especially when there are tools out there like vidIQ and TubeBuddy that assist you with this research, but I think there's a lot of value to seeing the videos in their natural environment, to following like an authentic user path, and to simply being able to go down those rabbit holes just like your customer might. But there is a bigger downside to just taking this approach though. You miss a lot of big videos because you're following this like Donnie Darko tangent universe. And that's why you built this completely free tool, which surfaces all the big hitters in your industry with their key metrics based on any input title. Now that we have a ton of titles and examples in our canvas, I like to sort these by creator channels, company or competitor channels, and adjacent niches. Why? Because just like it's important to ensure our own channel and content has a goal, a single obvious reason to exist, we need to understand the goals behind the content we're being inspired by so we don't make so-called sampling errors. So for example, the goal behind a creator channel is probably to grow an audience and monetize it through ads and then potentially through digital products. The goal behind a company channel is probably to gain an industry following that converts to customers and revenue. And this affects the kind of content you make. Let's take the example from before. In the inspiration video for the one you're watching right now, the appeal is super broad and the style is all fast cuts, Minecraft B-roll and scrappy production. But in our video, we're narrowing down on a smaller group of people who, yes, want to grow a YouTube channel, but they want to do it very specifically for their business. And so we probably need to be more professional in our delivery. So understand where your references and inspiration are coming from before you let it influence your decision making. Otherwise, you'll end up making the wrong videos for the wrong people. Right, your positioning's done, your reason for existing is defined, you have a whole canvas of content ideas ripe for the plucking. Now it's time to design your funnel. So step 2, design your funnel. So now I'm going to describe to you the reason why companies often fail on YouTube even if they produce good content. Now there are 3 parts to this, and this is probably the most important part of the video, so if you feel your attention span waning a little bit, I recommend you pause and get yourself a cup of strong coffee. So let's take to the page. Most people look at YouTube a little bit like this. A surface where videos are being watched. But for you as a business, there are depths beneath. A funnel, basically. And at the bottom of the funnel, you have the revenue event. This is the moment the deal is closed, the product is purchased, the service is enlisted. Now let's take you, my esteemed viewer, as an example. Pretend you're enjoying this video. Pretend you want to work with me, with us here at Humble&Brag. Now our offer starts at 10K a month. What's the likelihood you're going to go from where you are now to investing over 100K per year in your YouTube channel with us? Pretty slim, I imagine. And why is that? Well, this might be the first of our videos that you've watched, in which case you might not trust me with 100K of your hard-earned money or rather your company's hard-earned money. So we need steps here, and each step we want to ask 2 questions. What's the likelihood that this person takes that first action, and what's the likelihood that they take the next action as a consequence. And in this way, you build a value chain in which you present them with solutions to their problems to build trust, affinity, and authority every step of the way. So let's bring this to life with an example from the company I used to work at. So this is Foundry, and the combination of this channel and the funnel that I'm about to show you generated over 100K in revenue every single month. Now, Foundry was an online school that retrained people into tech careers over the course of about 6 months. There were cab drivers who became web developers, opera singers who became UX designers, and teachers who became data analysts. So we positioned the channel to help wannabe career changers find a path into tech. All of these videos were top of the funnel videos answering the very first questions people ask when they start thinking about a change. What is the field? What's it like to work in that field? And how do I know whether I'm a good fit? So let's go through a typical customer journey. You're a marketer at an SMB. You're a dab hand at spreadsheets, and a colleague mentions in passing that you should think about developing those skills, maybe even becoming a data analyst because they earn more than marketers. You think. I wonder what a data analyst actually does. So you search it. Whether on Google or on YouTube, you see this guy pop up. You click on it and watch the video. Great, so now you know a little bit about data analytics. So what's the next action that this viewer would take? Well, how about a free course to help them decide if data analytics is for them? All at their own pace, no commitments. Now you can imagine the likelihood of the viewer signing up is pretty high. There's a lot of value and very little friction, which is a great combo. Then they work through this course and get invited to a free webinar with a senior data analyst in which she teaches the entire working process of a data analyst and answers questions live. Not only that, this senior analyst is also a mentor at the school. So if you were to purchase the course, you could be working one-to-one with her rather than 1,000 to 1 as in this webinar. Again, very high value and pretty low friction. You just need to be in a certain place at a certain time. And at the end of this webinar, the speaker does a little pitch. If you like this webinar, you'll love the full program. She briefly lists out the superpowers and then invites the viewers to chat to a program advisor one-to-one, perhaps incentivized by a special discount. Now, this is the conversion or revenue event, the sales call to close the deal. And you know what the close rate was on someone who had attended a webinar and booked a call? Over 70%. So to make sure you're well set up for YouTube, you need a funnel in place. You need these nurture tactics, so you can collect a high volume of leads, which you can then nurture through free or low-cost, high-value offerings that solve their problems on the way toward the big sell. So let's compare a nurture funnel versus a pure acquisition play in numbers. So imagine 1,000 people watch your video. Perhaps 0.5% of people decide to purchase or book a call if you go straight to acquisition. So that's 5 people on a sales call, and because they're less educated about you and your offering, they convert to 20%. One sale. Now imagine 10% of viewers click on your free offering, and 40% of people sign up once they hit the landing page. Both realistic numbers. 40 people have now shared their contact details with you, which is already much better than having just 5 in the original scenario. And of those 40, 10 sign up for the webinar, 4 go on to book a call with your sales team, which has a close rate of 70%. There you go, 3 or 4 sales versus the 1 sale we have here. Plus this whole nurture audience that you're building in the background, which you can convert further down the road. Now, as ever, the reality is messier than this. People don't always follow the golden path. They do 4 free courses for 4 different topics, then purchase the course without speaking to the sales team, or attend 10 webinars before buying, or whatever. And that's okay. The main thing is that this number ends up bigger than this number because of the structure and value that you provide. Okay, so we have this awesome funnel in place ready to convert your audience. Now let's take a step back and admire it. What else do you notice? There's an entire content ecosystem. There's all the IP from the free courses and from all the webinars, which can be mined for video ideas, for social posts, for blog articles. The whole company's marketing has basically just been leveled up, and not just for YouTube. And that brings me very neatly onto phase 3, which is fitting YouTube into your marketing mix. So your marketing mix is just a term for the selection of channels you use in order to promote your product or service. When our clients come to us, they're typically spending 70 to 80% of their marketing budget on Google and Meta ads, and perhaps the rest on other ad networks and social platforms like TikTok, Reddit, or LinkedIn, and some maybe for media creation for organic blog and social media content. For them, YouTube is an organic play. Much like SEO and a blog, they want to build it out over time to provide the kind of audience growth and resilient flow of revenue we saw in the Foundry example. And this brings me on to the next big mistake companies often make. They silo the channel and try to grow it independently from all other marketing efforts, when one of the wonders of YouTube is that it can be the glue which holds your marketing efforts together, and often supercharges the performance of other channels. Let's head over to the whiteboard to show you exactly what I mean. Okay, so let's get started by jotting down all the marketing channels we would have at an established and growing startup. So we have paid social, paid search, SEO and organic search, email or lifecycle marketing, content discovery with companies like Outbrain and Taboola, Reddit and Quora marketing, Instagram, TikTok, webinars, sales, lead magnets and funnels, influencer marketing, and LinkedIn. Okay, so let's look at the research and strategy phase and ask ourselves the question, what can we learn from some of these channels that would benefit or inform the kind of content that we would produce on YouTube? Let's start with paid social as an example. Now, you could look at a number of different factors like messaging and the talent in the video, for example. With the messaging, maybe you've got particular features and benefits that have been particularly effective in converting people off the back of seeing that ad. And it's exactly that kind of messaging that you will probably want to pull into the YouTube video to use as your CTAs when you're taking people to lead magnets or to the product purchase. Secondly, the host or the talent in the video. Maybe it's your CEO or the founder who performs best when they're presenting the product or service. They convert better than an influencer, for example. That's a good hint that you should probably try and get your CEO or founder into the YouTube video as the host or talent, because they're credible and they convert well. So there are a couple of ideas of how paid social could influence your YouTube videos. So let's look at organic search and SEO next. If you take all your blog or magazine articles and rank them by conversions and rank them by traffic, you probably see some particular keywords and particular topics that perform very well for your audience. And that's obviously a fantastic input for the kind of videos that you would want to produce for YouTube. And once you produce those videos, you can obviously embed them within the articles themselves, and that's likely to lead to an improvement in performance in those articles as well. And that's something we'll talk about a little bit later when it comes to distribution. When it comes to topics like lifecycle marketing and sales enablement, I think at this stage where you've got people that are very close to your customer, so are talking one-to-one with your customer and probably fielding questions at scale with your customer, then you get some fantastic inputs into the kind of content that you could create that answers and responds to the kind of pain points and objections that your very specific customer has. And that's likely the kind of content that maybe it doesn't get so many views, but it's likely to convert extremely well because the customer is going to feel very heard. It's going to really appeal to their specific needs. Also, this is the kind of content that perhaps only you and your company can create because you're the only ones that really have insight into these very specific pain points. So for the lower funnel content, this is a great source of research, a great source of data, a great source of information. So to summarize, go through the process we just went through. Understand and document how YouTube can be embedded within your marketing to benefit both other channels and your YouTube channel itself, using what works in these channels as input for video and format ideas. And then, in turn, using these as distribution channels for your videos. That way, you'll ensure your marketing is much more than the sum of its parts, and you'll scale the channel more quickly than 98% of creators. Okay, so now we have our positioning, we have our funnel, and we have our marketing mix. Now it's time to cross the threshold from off-platform to on-platform and actually start creating content. So number 4, find your format and select your titles. At Humble&Brag, we almost always recommend that companies start with talking head content, just like I'm doing now. It's relatively low lift and it's easy to provide value to your audience. And so it provides a low risk, swift and smooth introduction to the world of YouTube. But it's important you're aware of what's possible, that there is a world beyond the talking head. So let's dip our toes in. There's this phrase from YouTube strategist Jamie Rawstorn that I love. Ideas on YouTube have the greatest leverage on success. Formats have the highest leverage on ideas. The format is foundational. And you know, this reminds me of our friends, the cake and the muffin. It's good that we didn't eat it. By choosing a certain format, you're again determining a bunch of other factors. Things like how differentiated you are and how much you stand out, how likely people are to convert after watching your video, how much editing is required, how much of an emotional connection they feel towards you, how long people will stick around to watch, and how entertaining or educational they find your content. So you shouldn't just choose your formats without first giving it some real thought, even if in the end you default to the kind of talking head video I'm doing right now. So let me talk you through a few examples of formats and of channels which have been particularly bold with their format selection. So one of the most effective formats I've deployed for businesses is the challenge format. This is essentially a format in which you get 1 or 2 or 3 contestants to achieve something difficult in a short space of time using your product. For example, learning a language in a week with Babbel. What's great about this is that the sensationalism and the stakes drive views and retention, while the product is placed kind of implicitly throughout the content as a means to an end, which helps conversion. Next up, we have reaction content. which is a variation on the standard talking head, but where the host is commenting and reacting to an industry trend, cultural phenomenon, or contrarian opinion from another expert in the field. Now, as I discussed in this video, this kind of format generally gets great watch times, often great views, but can suffer on the conversion side because the presenter is more of a conduit for the message rather than the original source. So the format has a direct impact on how the video might behave at a business level, and you can literally see that in the metrics. And it affects the role your host plays and the relationship between the viewer and them. This is something which Nate Black describes in detail in this excellent video, where he compares 4 different host roles: the hero, the performer, the teacher, and the commentator. 3 companies I often reference for their formats are RP Strength, Cult Repo, formerly known as Honeypot, and Nothing. RP Strength grew into the billions of views, I repeat, billions, off the back of the reaction format, with their resident exercise scientists critiquing the exercise regimes of the rich and famous. Cult Repo produced beautiful, in-depth documentaries about the origins of the most famous and influential coding languages, often interviewing the very people who invented them, like the bloke who wrote the first line of Python, for example. And in so doing, they grew a reputation among their exact target group, senior software engineers and web developers. And third up, Nothing got their CEO to review iPhones, harnessing his next level industry knowledge and insight to offer a perspective most tech reviewers can't even get close to, and simultaneously riding on the back of the wave of Apple's brand recognition and the hype around the release of every new iPhone. And what's interesting, particularly about RP Strength and Nothing, once their channels were flying, it gave them the creative freedom to explore and experiment with different formats. I really recommend you study their channels and see how they evolved from their pillar content and then branched out into challenge content, influencer collabs, mini documentaries, and vlogs. And that's the dream state, where your channel is such a mature and resilient source of brand recognition and revenue that you're released from the shackles of spreadsheet economics and marketing becomes fun again. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's make a start with the talking head tutorials, where you're helping your specific audience understand and solve that specific problem. So you're selecting 1 or 2 hosts from within your company. Generally, the more senior, the better. And you're using this format to firstly find and meet an unmet demand in a niche, secondly, to help your viewers accomplish something, and thirdly, to prove internally, quickly, that YouTube can make your company money. Now it's time to return to the canvas we created in phase 1. At this point, we enter the board and review the ideas and look for topics that will work well at this intersection. Proven to work on other channels, proven to work for other creators or competitors, and proven to address a genuine customer problem. And suitable for the format that we've selected. And you should have a reasonable idea of what a title for that video might be, but it definitely doesn't have to be final at this stage. Get 20 or so titles in here and roughly prioritize them. Then transfer them to a doc and review these with your wider team to get their feedback. Kick out the ones you don't like, add the ones you're not completely convinced about to the backlog, and highlight and prioritize the ones that are screaming out to be made. Here's a tip-top example from Career Foundry, how I'd learn data analytics if I had to start over, that basically checked every single one of these boxes and therefore performed extremely well. So in the end, you have 4 to 12 titles that constitute your launch strategy, and you're ready to move on to your next phase, which is get consistent. So now you've got your format and you've got your titles, it's time to start actually producing the videos. This topic could obviously be a whole video in itself, but let's focus in on the key thing you need to do here. You need to build out, whether in-house, with an agency or with freelancers, a production system that enables you to film at least 4 long forms in one sitting, or in one batch. Depending on how adept and confident your hosts are at presenting, this will typically be a full day's work and perhaps even 2. So why do you need to produce 4 long forms in one sitting? I mean, sounds like quite a lot, right? With almost every company we've worked with, we found they can't carve out time every week for filming, especially if the host is the CEO or a senior with critical management or operational responsibilities. However, they typically can make themselves available once every month or once every 2 months for a batch production. Now, before the YouTube gurus escalate in the comments, yes, there are downsides to this approach. Batching means you lock in content in advance, which reduces how responsive you are to, for example, trends and what the audience currently wants. Basically, you prioritize efficiency over impact. But as a business of any scale, this is a trade-off that typically needs to be made, unless you've prioritized YouTube to the point of having an entire team on the job, like Moment Lenses did, or like our friends over at 9X have done, for example. But this is something you can evolve towards once you've gained the traction you need to prove your investment in the channel is worthwhile. So next obvious question, why do you need to release a video every week? Well, there are 2 key points here. Firstly, just like any marketing channel, you need someone to own this channel. You don't hit play on Google ads or Meta ads and then just leave it. You have a manager monitoring and improving it. ideally constantly. Same with YouTube. And just like any other marketing channel, you need to test and you need to experiment. Just because you're putting in the reps with the positioning, the planning, and the research doesn't mean your first 4 videos are all going to take off. There are so many other factors at play. Yes, your title and packaging might be spot on, but your script structure, your host energy and likability, perhaps even just your audio quality, these are all things which can significantly impact your video's performance. You achieve quality through quantity, appraising each video you release, analyzing the data, and iterating on it. And quite simply, you provide your future audience with more opportunities to discover you. If you produce 1 video a month, you'll end the year with 12 videos. If you produce 1 a week, you'll end it with 52. And that's quite a difference, especially when you consider this second point. So secondly, channels typically don't grow linearly. That's not normally how it works. What actually happens is you post, and then one video takes off and leads to a step change in your performance, where you suddenly gain a bunch of subscribers in your niche who engage with your next releases and your back catalog and bump up your channel across all the metrics. While your research will help you identify potential breakout videos, it doesn't guarantee it. So again, get consistent to solidify YouTube's status as a channel internally with an owner, get good at making videos, and increase the chances of those breakout successes. So just before we move on to phase 6, another note about consistency. So consistency doesn't just mean the frequency with which you upload and release. It also means consistency of format, of style, of hosts, of personality, of branding. Everything so that your audience quickly learns what they can expect from you. If they know what they can expect, they know what they're going to get if they subscribe and follow you. And this is how you grow a following, develop a relationship, and build trust with your audience. It's fundamental. And it's one of the lessons I learned early on in my career when I started Babbel's YouTube channel in 7 different languages. Initially, I wanted to do everything under the sun, so tutorials and deep dives and travel documentaries and quiz shows. But it wasn't until we doubled down on polyglots, just showcasing their extraordinary capacity for speaking languages, that the channels and their revenue impact really began to grow. And maybe you think I'm contradicting myself now by saying both be consistent and experiment, but you can experiment in 2 key ways while remaining consistent. Firstly, by making small changes, so evolutions, not revolutions, to how you make your content. Like semi-scripting videos rather than completely scripting them to bring in a bit more spontaneity, or playing around with your set composition, for example. And secondly, you can be consistent in batches and then make a bigger pivot if you see it's not really working. Let's drill down on exactly that in phase 6. Get good at YouTube. So if you're a good marketer, especially in the digital realm, you're going to be constantly analyzing your data to iterate and improve. That's the same regardless whether you're managing meta ads, growing a blog through SEO, optimizing for geo mentions, or building up influencer marketing. For SEO, you're going to spend your time in Search Console, analytics, and Ahrefs, looking at rankings and search volumes, identifying opportunities for content creation and optimization. For YouTube, you're going to be looking at how well your video captures and retains attention. I'll repeat. Firstly, how well it captures attention with its packaging, so the topic choice, the title, and the thumbnail, and how well it retains that attention once the viewer clicks. Those are the most important metrics on YouTube. And at a basic level, that's exactly what the YouTube algorithm optimizes for. So if 20% of the people who see your thumbnail click on it, and 80% of those people watch until the end, your video is going to take off. So how do we know if our videos are retaining attention? Well, we look at this, the retention graph, which you'll find by clicking into YouTube Studio and then Content, selecting the video you want to analyze and scrolling down. If your retention graph looks like this, the audience isn't finding it very valuable and they're dropping off and watching something else. A good video will have a retention graph that looks more like this, with a much more stable line and minimal drop-off. And what's great about this graph isn't only that it's a snapshot that you can use to judge how good the audience think your content is, you can also drill down into it to identify which sections of your video need improvement. For example, if you see a precipitous drop-off at the beginning, you need to work on the promise, the intro, the hook, everything that brings the audience into the video. And if you see a steady decline with regular dips throughout, then you might need to work on how well your script is structured, for example, by adding signpost languaging and rehooks and cutting the fluff. Check out this video for more on that. Along with the retention graph, I'd encourage you to spend time in YouTube Analytics. Just give it a quick refresh each morning and get a sense of how views, watch time, and subs are developing over time, and make attributions why this might be. But don't get too hung up on your own data. Don't only focus on the quantitative, but also the qualitative. What do people say in the comments? Actively ask them what they want to see. And make sure you set aside a bit of time each week to watch what other creators are doing in your niche, pen and paper in hand. Is there a topic that's landed particularly well? What are examples of great packaging, of great thumbnail and title combinations? Are they doing something smart in their videos which you're not doing but should be? And what do people say in their comments? And how can you use this to evolve your videos? For this channel that you're watching right now, Callum and I had little experience actually being in front of the camera. So one of our first focuses was to get comfortable with that, to get used to scripting for ourselves, to being a bit more natural, perhaps being a little bit more off the cuff. And speaking for myself, I still have a way to go, but we're definitely seeing it in the watch times, which have been going up and up ever since we started recording consistently for ourselves. So in summary, adopt a growth mindset, keep up with what's working on YouTube in your niche, and iterate on and improve your channel as you go. And finally, each time you have a video, make sure you do the following. Number 7, distribute intelligently. So it takes the average creator 77 videos to get to 1,000 subs, but you and your company can do it a lot more quickly. How? Through intelligent distribution. Let's time travel back to phase 3 briefly, and while I repeat my words of wisdom, I'll move over back to the whiteboard. Okay, so we're back at the whiteboard, and I'm going to talk you through how we can now distribute our YouTube video across different channels in order to benefit that video and accelerate its growth and accelerate the growth of the channel, but also how this YouTube video is going to benefit these other channels as well. So let's start with a nice easy one, organic search. Earlier on in the video, I talked about how organic search can be used as a kind of input for your research when you're deciding which YouTube videos to make. So now we've got to the point where we have this YouTube video and we can return the favor and we can embed this YouTube video, perhaps just in the one article that you used as a source of information, but potentially if you've got 10 articles on a similar topic, obviously this video can go into all 10 articles. And 2 things here. Firstly, the YouTube video, the watch times that you see on YouTube videos that are embedded in this kind of native environment on your website, surrounded by broader kind of discussion of the topic. Generally, the watch times on these videos are extremely strong and above average. So that benefits the performance not only of the YouTube video through views from here, but also natively to the platform as well, because the average watch time gets bumped up. So this really works both ways. For the article, again, dwell time, session time on the articles is also an important metric for SEO and SEO performance. And this really benefits from having a video embedded. So turning the clock back when I was in charge of both these strategies at the last company I worked at, we saw about a minute extra session time once we embedded a high quality YouTube video within the articles as well, which led to an immediate jump and a pretty significant jump in the performance of SEO at the company as well. And in the end, we had 30,000 odd views on our YouTube videos every day, and we had over 1 million organic hits to the blog every single month. And that was because, or in large part, because of this kind of dual strategy. Let's talk about a couple of ways that YouTube can influence paid social. So the first strategy is the one that Gary Vee's been talking about for a long time, which is essentially where you take the high performing content from YouTube and you use that as an ad format within paid social. And that could be for long form video and for short form video. Again, I'll give you 2 quick examples. Short form video, if you're producing that on YouTube and you have a particular video that's performed extremely well, if you put some money behind that on paid social, whether that's on YouTube or Instagram, for example, it's very likely to have a very low cost per view, a very low CPM. And perhaps if you just adapt this with a little bit of messaging or product focused messaging, perhaps you have an ad that gets very cheap, very strong reach with decent enough conversion to make it a viable asset. Similarly, for long form, when you look at YouTube as an ad platform, you can get very, very cheap cost per views when you take, for example, the in-feed position on the homepage. And if you have a long form video that gets good views and good conversion organically, it'd be a perfect candidate to be put in that in-feed position on the homepage as well. So in this way, YouTube and paid social can really, again, benefit one another. Okay, let's talk about one more example. And here I'm going to put 2 channels under one hat with webinars and lives and influencer marketing. So this is kind of a whole nother video in itself, but just very briefly, one of the channels that's worked extremely well for us in the past is merging these 2. So basically having webinars and lives to nurture leads to the point at which they take a sales call or they purchase the product, and then involving influencers in these webinars and lives. And the advantage of involving influencers is threefold. Firstly, you get a lot more reach when you're inviting people to join the webinar. Secondly, the webinar is often more engaging and more convincing for the participants. And thirdly, if the webinar lives as a live on the influencer's channel, it continues to get a lot of reach even after the webinar is finished, and it continues to convert as well. And this is content that you can then cut up into shorts, for example, and then republish to your YouTube channel. So again, you get a lot of different synergies between all these different channels by embedding YouTube into your marketing mix and by distributing your YouTube videos through your marketing mix. This is kind of how it works, and you can imagine all these different arrows between all these different post-its. It becomes quite a powerful system. Okay, that brings us to the end of this little demonstration. I want to head back to the table now and just talk about one more thing with regard to this, and that is basically how and when you should decide if to remove one of these channels or to experiment and improve it as a distribution channel for your YouTube video, because some YouTube gurus will say, don't do this. But I think it's a little bit more complex than that. So let's get back to the table and discuss exactly that. So again, we might have some YouTube gurus escalating in the comments. There's an argument that you should grow an audience specifically on YouTube, as that's the platform native audience that will keep coming back for more of your content and boost your most important metrics like CTR, watch time, returning viewers. But there are two things. Firstly, you're not a creator who's prioritized growing a YouTube channel. You're a business and you're growing your company through your integrated marketing. Yes, you want to acquire new leads and prospects through your channel, but you also want to use the content to educate and nurture the audience you have on other channels with this hugely valuable long-form content. And secondly, distributing on other channels doesn't automatically lead to a negative impact on reach on YouTube. You can easily go into your YouTube analytics and see how viewers from different sources perform, whether they watch for 30 seconds or 6 minutes. And if there's one source which performs particularly poorly, well then exclude or experiment with it. So let's take a breather and a step back and see where you're at. Number one, you've positioned your channel to solve a specific problem for a specific audience, making sure there's a good overlap between the content you create and your company's offering. Number two, you've designed a funnel that ensures there's a natural and irresistible next step for your viewers. Number three, you've understood how YouTube fits into and powers your marketing mix, or your marketing ecosystem. Number four, you've identified your feasible formats and high potential topics for your channel launch. Number five, you've started producing consistent content consistently while giving room for experimentation and evolution. Number six, and now you're monitoring your own performance through your data, as well as the performance of creators and companies on YouTube, and you're iterating from batch to batch. And finally, number seven, you've built release systems that ensure your videos are benefiting the rest of your marketing, and the rest of your marketing is benefiting your videos. You are fully integrated. And if you've done all those things, I have no doubt you'll be generating leads consistently from your channel. So congratulations. You now have a predictable system for YouTube growth. Now there's just one phase left to go from the brand building, revenue generating machine that you now have to become a hyper established YouTube incumbent. And that's going full funnel with your channel. That's the next video in line. Check it out here, and I'll see you there, I guess. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you learned something new, and to never ever miss another video again, of course.